ft.org.
Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to the entire world receiving our signals via the magic of El Internet, formerly known as ARPANET, created by who? We, the people, created by you, now controlled by whom? The billionaires, something that we must take back, which watching what occurred over this weekend was great. I'm still smiles from eye to eye, from whatever to whatever. It was great. But anyhow, without further ado, we'll transmit ourselves to the geniuses in the studio. Howard Reynolds, Jacques Van Beber, Emat. How are you guys doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing all right.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you? We've got Howard upstairs slaving away in his lair right now.
Oh, so he's out there in that little cubby hole doing his thing.
Yes, sir.
So
keeping the wheels turning.
now what's the word of the day? What wisdom do we have from the one and only Jacques?
Well, I'm kind of saddened by this latest events in Israel and Iran. So get ready, America. Another war of conquest is on the horizon as we place our warplanes along the Atlantic coast. So it looks like the arms manufacturing war hawks have a bright future. Plenty of death and profit off of a war with Iran. We will do this under the guise of protecting our allies in Israel. And that's a sad excuse right now. War and law are a lot alike in that they both are about how to take something away from someone else, their money, their land, their lives.
Boom, or we should say booyah. Look, let me tell you, Jack. You nailed it. That's going to be the second topic that I cover today. I think it's very, very important. The first one is going to be with Dr. Manuel. Manuel, so when you're thinking slowly, you're slowly thinking. With that, Dr. Manuel Pastor, who is the ICE national not coordinator, but he's at the University of South Carolina, and he was at the rallies in Los Angeles, and he has an important point that he wants to make. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play him. Let me make sure that I'm all connected. We'll move on from there. And folks, remember the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Here is el Doctor Manuel Pastor. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, we are honored once again to have Dr. Manuel Pastor. Dr. Manuel Pastor is a distinguished professor of sociology and American Studies and Ethnicity at the University of Southern California. He currently directs the Equity Research Institute at USC. Pastor holds an economics PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and is the inaugural holder of the Terpargian chair in civil society and social changes at USC. I always get that wrong, but anyhow, how you doing? Welcome aboard, Dr. Pastor. How's it going?
Good. It's good to see you again. I know you have new polo shirts. Looks good.
Yes, our Politics Done Right polo shirts. But hey, look, I am so disappointed in the coverage that we are getting over what's occurring in LA. And I figured the best place to get the information is the one who's there and the one who knows. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's actually happening in LA, albeit a tiny portion of LA?
Well, the real story which is not in a tiny portion of LA, is the ICE raids and the mass deportations. Because what happened was that Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff in the White House and architect of this reign of terror, decided that Immigration and Customs Enforcement was not meeting its targets. And that the easiest way to do that was to shift from focusing in on criminals who, after all, are trying to hide, to Home Depots, to garment factories, to just this Sunday in Orange County, flower sellers on the street who were selling flowers for Father's Day. So while all of the media attention has been on the conflagrations that are happening in a very limited part of downtown LA between protesters and the police, the real story is the way that ICE has fanned out into our communities, making arrests of, they say, at least half to 2/3 of who they are arresting are long-term residents who go to work every day, have families, are a key part of our economy and our society. So it's been awful to see the way the media focuses in on the flash and not really on the story.
Look, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, and I'm so glad that you corrected me there. And audience, this is what Dr. Pastor says so important. We are concentrated on those 4 square blocks where people are interacting with the National Guard, or not the National Guard, but with the LA police officers, while the real story is what is occurring. You know what's interesting, Dr. Pastor? Think about this. The premise that Donald Trump had was that there were all of these criminals that were out of the insane asylums and out of the jails of Latin America, all these and Latin America, Africa, the Caribbean, they were all being shipped out there. We all knew it was a lie because most of the people who come over here are actually law-abiding folks just looking for a job. Yes, you have the bad element, but even the bad element is a very small percentage, not only of the foreigners that come in, but also they have a lower crime rate than the people in the natural-born United States citizens themselves. So I think it proves that the president was lying. There were not enough criminals to arrest to get these people out. Your context on that.
So I will say something about that, but I wanted to say something first about, yes, the scenes that we're seeing in downtown LA about conflict between particularly young, very frustrated protesters and the LAPD. First, I was at one of those confrontations at City Hall a week ago, Sunday, in which we were trying to host a prayer vigil, and at the last minute, the prayer vigil got called off. But a couple of us went down to head off people who were coming down there. And yes, there were people who were agitating, but there's just a big level of anger, of frustration, of rage on the part of young people in particular that this insult to our city would take place. And the challenge of our times is, how do we change or challenge that hot rage of protest into the cold anger of strategy to be effective? And part of what you're seeing, the clashes are with the LAPD. But the LAPD does not want to be in the middle of this. The only reason the LAPD, our local police force, is there is because the National Guard showed up, because ICE showed up, because the Marines showed up, and they don't know how to do crowd control. And so there's a widespread frustration here. What is interesting, it could perhaps be very influential, which gets to your question, is there's also now a frustration on the part of the owners of garment factories, of the farmers who are finding that their workforce is too scared to come to the fields to get the food that we all eat, of restaurant owners who are finding that their workers are not showing up. And you may have noted that just this weekend, Donald Trump put out a tweet and now has the ICE sending out memos saying, well, don't show up at the Home Depots. Don't show up at the fields. Don't show up at the restaurants, because now he's hearing for these powerful business people who don't want their labor force taken away. Because the reality of immigration in the United States is not that of gang members coming from Venezuela. Not to deny that there aren't some of those, but the reality is people who are showing up to pick our fruits, to clean our houses, to work in our construction industry. For example, here in LA, 1/3 of the construction labor force is undocumented. If we are to recover from the fires, those folks need to feel safe to be able to come to work. And so part of what's going on is that the business sector too is beginning to reject us. But it is really important to realize that Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, who was a Department of Homeland Security secretary, for them, it is about spectacle and television reality show and not the actual reality on the ground.
Now, interestingly, that will ultimately hurt the administration, because I saw a couple of streets in where we have the people that do the flea markets empty, zero people out there downtown, some parts of LA. As you mentioned, the garment district, nobody's coming out to work. So it's actually going to materially affect Trump. What's interesting is California is the largest economy in the United States, in which our undocumented workers play a very important part about it. How fast will that affect the entire United States economy, just the California portion, as far as you're concerned?
Well, it is super significant, because one of the things we tend to think of with California, it is the 4th largest economy
in the world.
And we tend to think of it as a place of high technology and innovation. But it's important to realize that behind every software engineer is an army of nannies, food service workers, gardeners, construction workers, and many of them are undocumented. The share of undocumented folks in Los Angeles County is high, but right behind it is Santa Clara County. That is the heart of the Silicon Valley. So this affects, one of the things we don't realize is how interdependent we are on each other. We are dependent on this immigrant labor to take care of our children, to take care of our elders, to do the work of construction, to do the work of food service. And that enables so many of the rest of us to do that work as well. So I do hope that this begins to filter through. But it's important to remember that this is an administration that has been able to uniquely combine cruelty and stupidity. That is, to really focus in on the spectacle of making people suffer because they believe that that appeals to their MAGA base, and to also do things that are incredibly counterproductive from the point of view of the nation as a whole. A tariff war that is misinformed, that is actually going to hurt us. An attack on immigrants when we need this immigrant labor to prop up our economy. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to continue to grow. A fiscal policy that's about tax cuts for the wealthy and cutting off the support that we need for the bulk of us. Again, a combination of cruelty and stupidity. It hasn't caught up with them yet, but I have the feeling that this last weekend, in which the protests on the streets against impending authoritarianism outweighed the numbers on the streets to support the Dear Leaders birthday march, may be a sign that things could turn.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. Dr. Pastor, you wrote an article in Dissent called Rage and Prayer in Los Angeles, one that I hope to repost as well at our sites, a very substantive article that I think everybody needs to read. Why don't you give me a few bullets on that and then give me a closer? What would you like? What should I have asked you that I didn't?
Well, I do hope that people read the article, and what it's about is going from this confrontation on the streets when I saw the anger of young people to a labor supported rally to free a labor leader, David Wett, who'd been arrested, to a redone prayer vigil that brought probably about 1,500 people to downtown LA to protest against ICE and to pray for peace. And I remember being there and being somewhat frustrated because I kept thinking, well, calling for peace, listening to folk songs when there's so much violence on the street and which the soundtrack of Los Angeles, Los LA is Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, that it seemed out of touch with the anger of young people. But then that group of faith leaders led a march to the federal building. And on the federal building, they knelt down and prayed in front of the National Guard. And young people who were there parted way so that these faith leaders could come to the steps. And when the faith leaders knelt, the young people knelt. What they needed to see was that non-violence wasn't about stepping back and not doing anything. That non-violence, as it was in the 1960s, was about brave confrontation, but having the discipline of nonviolence to move people to your side. So that is really the big point, is that in this moment, we need to find our inner John Lewis, the courage to walk across that bridge at Selma, the courage to resist the violence that will come our way, and the courage to inspire people to follow in this moment. LA is rising. The question is, will the rest of America do the same?
Dr. Manuel Pastor, Distinguished Professor of Sociology and American Studies and Ethnicity at University of Southern California. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Siempre un placer estar contigo. Always good to be with you.
Muchísimas gracias, hermano. Have a wonderful day, sir.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that, but he is so right. A lot of points there that bear mentioning. Again, our economy fails. I repeat, for those who are xenophobic, it may feel good when you see those folks on the streets being manhandled and treated like cattle and thrown out of the country. I mean, if these were criminals, yeah, no big deal. But these are your neighbors that are going to work, that are building your homes, etc. When you make policy on lies, it comes back and it bites you. Today we're going to talk about the policies on immigration made on lies, as well as our foreign policy with Israel based on lies, and the outcomes are always the same. Some wealthy folks profit from the chaos, but we, the people, suffer in many ways year after year after year as they blame much else. But again, all of our economy will or would collapse if Donald Trump were ever to be successful in deporting all these people. He won't be, because the business leaders won't let him do that. Yeah, he came out a couple on the weekend and said, okay, kind of leave the farm workers alone. Kind of leave the hotel workers alone. Kind of leave those people that we really need alone. Well, it's a lot of them that we need. It's a lot of them that we need. Not building homes, etc. In Florida, we have people coming out and saying, I didn't vote for not having people to work for me. I actually like the guy that I hired to build the homes. I'm a contractor. I'm building homes. I have nobody to build the homes with. And why is that? Were all his workers undocumented? No. But given the way Donald Trump operates, undocumented isn't enough, especially since they're not going through due process. So if I am walking the streets right here in Houston and an ICE person detects that I have some sort of an accent, they may just stop me and they'll present your papers. I don't walk with my passport showing that I'm a naturalized American citizen. They may just throw me on a plane to El Salvador or to one of the many countries that they're trying to make deals with to capture and take those people that we just want to throw out of the country. They are setting up a mechanism, and the reason why they don't want due process is that they want the ability to disappear people. And I'm not saying that quietly. I'm not saying that hyperbolically. If you see what they have done thus far, there are many people without voices. Remember, a lot of these people don't have voices. They don't have anybody to advocate for them because those who would advocate for them are scared that in the process of advocating for them, they themselves are captured and thrown out of the country. This is real for many. There's a lot occurring that isn't making the 6 o'clock news, that isn't making the cable news. The the fracturing of these communities that are occurring right now. It is sad. It is going to harm. The interesting thing is it will harm all of us. You may get for those that are masochistic, it may get a good feeling when Trump shows his goons marching people off to the plains, or many of them not even seen, but marched out of the country. But over time, it'll show up in your grocery bills. It'll show up in the products that you no longer find at the stores because they're all rotten on the vine. These are things that critical thinking, they are against critical thinking as well, but these are the things that critical thinking would make very clear to all of us folks. These are things that critical thinking would make very clear. When you make policies on a lie, you fail. The problem is some will fail upwardly. Donald Trump all his life has been a failure but had the right being to fail upwardly. Some have that ability. Now, welcome aboard, Agolf Twitler. Welcome aboard, Lisa Blair from Atlanta, Georgia. Harry Denson from Missouri City, Texas. Maz Maniac, good morning. Miss T. Marie, welcome aboard as well. I think you're from Massachusetts, if I remember correctly. Twitler says, so much for the no new wars promise and the cheaper groceries 1 2. We also have him saying Trump is like the elementary school bully who asks his class to go to his birthday party and bitter after no one shows up. We all remember it. Yep, very few people showed up to the great, powerful military parade. We don't do that here in America. We don't have to show power. The most powerful are usually the ones you'd never heard of. Miss T. Marie says, sadly, most still supporting Trump are still convinced of is only targeting dangerous criminals. There aren't enough dangerous criminals to get the volume of people deported that he is seeking. Impossible to occur. Trump rolled back some on immigration because he realized it would hurt his golf clubs and he doesn't want food prices to skyrocket too late. He's done so much damage and he kind of called it off yesterday in our Substack chat. Whoa, welcome aboard. Law Rule says criminals don't lose their human rights. They call all immigrants criminal. Your differentiating helps them. I think I understand, but I don't know. Do you lie says if ICE wanted to get immigrants, all it has to do is hit Joe V's grocery store. Look, let me tell you something. The reality is, my friend, we need immigrants. You need immigrants. You need even those undocumented workers. If you're receiving a social security check, they're the ones that are keeping it solvent for you. I got I some more. That the next topic is Iran, but before that, let's go to the phones. Brother Johnny is on line one. How you doing this morning, Johnny?
I asked Magic Jack if he had a chance to see any of the so-called birthday bash slash military display this Saturday, and he says no. He says I was too busy protesting, and I says correct answer. He didn't see it either. I didn't see it either. I wouldn't see it because I just can't stand to watch that guy. But I did catch a glimpse of it on a video presented on TYT, of course, and to see the scowl on his face. He is such a miserable, pitiful excuse of a human being. Him and his entire family, all of them lined up together, looking so nasty. These are despicable people. And Marco Rubio looked bored. These people so disrespectful towards these people who are in the military service marching by. Now, you know that I am anti-war. I don't believe in war generally. And I don't believe we should have a standing army. But to see these people passing by in uniform like that and to just scowl at them as they pass, I just wanted to knock his block off, I swear. And I know it doesn't sound progressive, but guess what? I reserve that right as a human being, seeing all this mass suffering and disruption that he is responsible for. Him and Netanyahu and all these right-wing so-called leaders, they all need to be in prison like yesterday. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Have a good one, my brother. And you're right, and you have the right to say what you said about the military parade. The military parade was a failure. Not only was it a failure, but he really tore into Hegseth. What happened here? These guys, this didn't look anything like North Korea or Russia. He lit up Hegseth from what reports are saying for the failure that it was. People are not interested. People were not interested. If you want to know where the action was, it was no kings. That's where the magic happened. No kings. All right, let's go to Patrick, line number 2. Come on in, brother Patrick. How you doing, my dear brother?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Talk to me, sir.
I want to hit about 3 topics as fast as I can. A lot of times when you say that Trump is a rapist, people will call in and remind you that that's went to civil court and that wasn't a crime. Can we agree on that?
Yes, we can agree on that.
When they do that, can you explain to them that the Supreme Court also said that being here undocumented was not a crime? It was a civil issue. And that deportation is not. Go ahead.
Yeah, we should do that because I mean, they sneer at you whenever Trump said he was going after criminals, and whenever he deports just regular folks that are working and been here 30 years, you'd have them sneer and tell you, well, the first law they broke was they're criminals because they're here illegally. And it's like, okay, it's a civil offense. It's not a criminal offense. And you're right. I think that needs to be stressed a bit more.
So no papers, no crime. Next, where I like to point out that the cost of our Golden Dome is going to be pretty close to the cost of the medical coverage and medical care that everybody's going to be giving up. Can we agree on that?
Oh, absolutely so. But the funny thing, yes, I agree with that. The funny thing about it is, the Golden Dome will always be defeatable. And Iran, who's using lesser technology than the Golden Dome, 10 to 15% of their missiles are falling into Israel. So, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up. The signs of India and France are both speculating and asserting that Arrow 3, which is a part of that Iron Dome system, was hacked, and it was turned against itself. Now, the next point I'd like to make is I don't think that Israel would have attacked Iran if they thought that Iron Dome would fail. So it gave them a false sense of superiority, which led them to more violent actions. And now that it's failing, we have kind of a test on whether or not we want to put a system in like this. And then I'd also like to point out that one of the most successful attacks, actually two of the most successful attacks, I put successful in quotes because I don't like it that it happened, but they were low tech. The Hamas going over the walls, and then quite recently when Ukraine essentially Amazoned in all their weapons 4,000 miles into the Soviet Union and destroyed a third of their
Bombers.
Air fleet.
Yes.
Wars are no longer going to be high tech because high tech can get hacked. Obama started that when we hacked their centrifuges in Iran. That's how we stopped their nuclear development the first time around. And a lot of people wish that he hadn't because it did open a door into cyber attacks, and that's where we are now. So we can put $1 trillion into the system, and it's just going to get turned against us.
I mean, the thing about it is, first of all, you're right. Okay. Secondly, people like to believe that technology is this magical thing, right? Technology can't go against the laws of physics or the laws of math. And the laws of math says that because the Iron Dome has to be is so complicated that it is overpowered, in fact, by numbers, right? In other words, we can have a million missiles that are just dumb missiles, just firing into wherever we want to get it. The amount of intelligent missiles to capture those dumb missiles is bound to have several fail, and they'll fail for many reasons, right? Here, I used to write SCADA, right? And you guys heard me say many times, programming is very easy. The part of programming software that's difficult is the exception. And let me give you a few exceptions that you really can't account for well when programming. 10 missiles coming at the same time, creating a change in atmospheric condition that is actually used to determine the path of the attacking missile. That is complex to the nth degree. You can say, okay, we use AI to figure all these things out. Yeah, but there's a part that AI doesn't figure out, right? And AI doesn't figure out things that are randomized. Okay, it's randomized. So what it says, AI would actually determine automatically that X percentage of missiles based on conditions will actually get through. And just that alone tells you there would be significant deaths. I mean, all of this is math, all of this is physics, and things that the Hegseth of the world and the Donald Trumps of the world have no clue of. So they can go out and say, we'll have the Golden Dome, and Israel can believe that it's gold. You know how Israel is actually fighting those missiles? Finding them in Iran to take them out before they actually get launched. They're back to the old style, Patrick. That's what they're doing.
Low tech.
Yes. They're out there with the Mossad in Iran finding out where the missiles are so they can take them out before they take flight, because Iron Dome isn't as successful as one would believe. If you doubt it, look at the destruction that started. Look at parts of Tel Aviv now finally looking like Gaza. Okay, so and not a very small part, albeit a very small part, because there's nothing close to what they did to Gaza. Anything else, Patrick?
Well, I'd like to add some complexity to the formula for intercepting missiles. Theory of relativity at 25,000 miles per hour, that body of matter is going to experience time differently than we will, or the weapon system trying to intercept it. So we're trying to collide two objects going 25,000 miles an hour, and time happens at a different rate for them.
You had to go there, didn't you? You had to
Yes.
go there, Patrick. Patrick, you had to go there. Man, I tell you, you see, folks, when I tell you we've got the smartest callers, there you go. Yeah, but that is actually true. Though that's a very fraction of the time, but it is true. It is true. Thank you, my dear brother. Anything else?
Yeah, my closer is that a lot of people now are speculating, or they're asserting that Trump lulled Iran on purpose into being comfortable to set them up for an attack. And if they believe that, there are operatives here, and there's probably already a plan to strike back.
Well, we're going to talk
For-
about that because there are some airplanes moving. We're going to talk about that in a little. But let me jump to Bruce, and then I'll go to Mehdi Hassan, and then we'll talk about those planes that you just mentioned. All right. Thank you very much, Patrick. Let's go to Bruce. Come on in, Bruce.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Bruce. You're here.
Yes, sir. I grew up in Houston and I went to California in '87 and worked there 23 years. So I've driven through the California countryside many times, and my mind was blown. As far as you could see to the horizon would be tomato fields, onion fields, cantaloupe fields,
Yep.
artichoke fields, garlic fields. If we're going to turn the Statue of Liberty's torch into a middle finger, all right, we're going to be paying $40 for a doggone hamburger. I don't care if you go to North Dakota. When you walk through the produce department in a store, you're seeing produce from California and Mexico and other places, but California. So people need to keep that in mind. But the other thing I want to say is I had some health problems, and I went to have an angiogram, and the guy that did it, Dr. Martinez, Hispanic, and he said, there's some things on here that aren't right. Can I do some further tests? And he did, and he found out I had a life-threatening problem. So he saved my life. The surgeon that did the surgery, double aorta femoral bypass, 5-hour surgery, was Ramachandra, who's also got to be a son or grandson or great-grandson of immigrants. Immigrants saved my life. Immigrants pick our produce. These people, the second, third, and fourth generation wind up being your doctors and your lawyers and your scientists. But anyway, I just wanted to vent that people don't realize how much produce comes out of California. If you want to pay $40 for a hamburger, go ahead and get rid of the field workers. I'm done.
Thank you so kindly, Bruce. That is so true. Uju, I contacted them about the drop that we had in the Substack feed. They said there was a 10-minute dropout out of their control for the entire streaming of Substack. I was very concerned because you know what our subject was, and it got very hairy and I was very concerned that it was actually cut on purpose. I have no evidence that that's the case. All I can tell you is they claim it was a total blackout for 10 minutes. That's what we're told. The one thing that I can say is I went ahead when our stream fell to see if I saw any other live streams on then. I didn't see any other live streams on. But again, I just found it that the subject that we were talking about was hairy, and you know what we're talking about. Catherine Hale says, "Good morning, Egberto. Just tuning in. Thanks for being here, Catherine, and for Ricardo Lemos, Lisa Uju, Tina Russ, Todd Dale, Monique Daniels, and all the others in the system right now. Thank you guys for being here. Good morning, Kathy Utley. All right. Before I go to the other call, I have to do this because I want to get this in. Um, Remember that I said when policies are made of lies or created based on lies, it always fails. But also, what fails is when we are made ignorant, when we are made unaware of why things are occurring. I want to play a 2-minute piece from Mehdi Hasan. I played it at 3 o'clock yesterday. but I need folks to hear this. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the genesis of the problem that America has with Iran. So let's play that and then we'll be back.
Western media coverage of the Iran-Israel crisis, you might be witnessing a rather upside-down, topsy-turvy, bizarro view of the world, of reality. You're not being told everything. You're being given skewed perceptions. For example, if you're watching Western media coverage, you might come away with the impression that Iran attacked Israel out of the blue and Israel is responding, when it's the other way around. We all saw on Thursday night that it was Israel that launched an illegal act of aggression against Iran. Iran is the victim here, Israel is the aggressor, but in the Western media coverage, Israel is the victim always. Some other points you may miss while watching Western media coverage, for example, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel does. Iran is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. Israel isn't. Iran has allowed IAEA inspectors into its country. Israel doesn't. It's a nuclear double standard that I raised with former Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon a few years back on my Al Jazeera English show Head to Head, in a clip that's recently gone viral again.
How many nuclear weapons does Israel have? Because experts say it's anywhere between 80 and 400.
So what?
So what?
Yeah, so what? Has Israel ever threatened?
Do you recognize the hypocrisy of Israel having a secret illicit nuclear weapons program that it won't open up its doors to and won't talk about, and then lecturing everyone else in the region about nuclear weapons?
Absolutely not. You know why?
You talked about hypocrisy. Let me ask again. If an Iranian guest came on my show and I asked him about Iran's nuclear program, he said, I don't know, I'm not going to talk about it. Would you be okay with that? You'd be outraged.
Of course
and
I
yet
would
you
be.
sit here as a former minister of the Israeli government saying, I don't know, never talked about nukes with anyone.
Because there was like 16 United Nations Security Council resolutions against Iran.
And there is against Israel. And there is against Israel as well.
About
your nuclear program?
No.
Yes, there is. UN Resolution 487. Let me read it to you. The UN Security Council in 1981 says, calls upon Israel urgently to place its nuclear facilities under the safeguards of the IAEA. Why haven't you done that?
Because...
There you have it, the nuclear double standard. Israel violates multiple UN Security Council resolutions when it comes to its own stockpile of nuclear weapons. And yet Western media interviewers who have multiple Israelis on air all the time never really ask about this, never really ask about Israel's nukes. Why? I get why Israel wants to maintain its policy of nuclear ambiguity, of not confirming or denying that it has nukes. But why does the US media, the UK media, the Canadian media, why do they all have to go along with it?
Now, the other issue, folks, is the following. I think Mehdi Hasan was very clear there, unambiguous, very clear. But the most important thing that one should ask, right, is why is Iran our enemy? Is Iran really our enemy? And how comes we don't put Saudi Arabia in the same boat like Iran? Remember what I've said, folks. When you make policies based on lies, when you execute foreign policy based on lies, the outcomes are never good for the American people, but it is always good for the defense industrial complex and others. And this isn't conspiracy theory. Let's give some good examples here. Where did the people who effected the largest terrorist attack on the United States come from? Saudi Arabia. Who is one of our largest or biggest friends right now, especially under the Trump administration? Saudi Arabia. Had Iran ever attacked the United States preemptively in any real form of terrorism, a massive terrorist attack, people are going to say, don't forget the Iran crisis during the Carter administration because of the Shah of Iran. I'm going to ask my audience, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over this in detail, but I'm going to ask the audience to just go to a Wikipedia page and learn about Mossadegh. Learn about what turned America against Iran, who was once one of our best allies in the region, while we were, of course, exploiting their natural resources. I want you to look it up. This was a country who finally decided to tell England and the United States and others you know what? Why are we getting pennies on the dollars for giving you this raw material that is Genesis to Iran? Why are we doing that? We are going to nationalize our oil industry. Immediately, Iran went from friend to foe. I want to give you the parallel with Venezuela. When the oligarchs in Venezuela for decades took advantage of the population at large. And then comes their own guy, and I can't remember his name right now, but then Hugo Chavez, because Hugo Chavez is a direct result of policy or policies. Hugo Chavez comes about and says, vamos a tener la revolución bolivariana. What he meant is, we are going to now take our own resources into our own hands. Venezuela went from best friend, which Citgo and all these places that is Venezuelan oil guys. It went from being a good friend to a pariah. Once they stood up and said, you know what, we want to control our own resources. No longer will foreign corporations come into our country and control our resources. And you can go after friend that have become foe over and over again and see that same pattern. As long as the dictator of said country allows the certain countries to come and take their resources at a discount, they're friends. As soon as they say, we want to fight back, or not we want to fight back, we want to control our own resources, it's war. Now, here in the United States, I am waiting, just like we had the No Kings March or protests. I am waiting for the time when the American people say, wait a minute, those public lands in Colorado belongs to us all. Therefore, all resources pulled out of Colorado belongs to we the people and go into the coffers of the United States. We no longer have to have these big taxes anymore because it is ours. I am waiting for the American people to say all the oil on public lands belong to us. In fact, all the oil belongs to we the people, the American people, as opposed to the few that enriches them all. You see, if Venezuela was ever successful in democratizing its natural resources, and the people of Venezuela, not the corporations of the rest of the world and the oligarchy in Venezuela, or the oligarchy in, as the Shah of Iran was in Iran. If the resources got democratized, the big shots, the wealthy, all right, think about it. At that point, we have Americans fighting for what really is theirs. And we no longer have an underclass in America, this very rich country. All right, let me go to somebody I hadn't called before. Miguel, come on in, Miguel. Miguel, you're on. All right, is Miguel there? Take yourself off mute, Miguel, if you're still there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. All right, let's go to Tall Boss. Tall Boss, come on in.
Yes, sir. Greetings, my brother.
Greetings, my brother. Talk to me, man.
Yeah, man. I want to say, God bless America, the world's greatest country, because this country gave most of us immigrants a platform to talk upon.
Amen.
I'm appreciative of it. And some people like to think as an immigrant we are not patriotic. Yes, we are.
Thank you for saying that, brother. That's very important.
And as immigrants, we help build this what? MS. Okay? So, and if you talk to the economists, they will tell you that in order to raise the TPA, put more immigrants up in this MF. Have a good morning, sir.
Thank you, my brother. Listen, I'm glad that Tall Boss called in. Yes, this is an immigrant country, and immigrants, we all migrate here because we see, first of all, Uh, Number one, America sells itself very well, but number two, we come over here and do quite a bit to make this country what this country is. All Americans do that. All immigrants do that. Anything else, tall boss, before I move on?
God bless America, the world's greatest country.
All
He
right,
will be
thank you very much, tall boss. All right, let's go to Betty. Come on in, Betty.
Okay, good morning now, Alberto.
Good morning, sis.
I went to, yeah, in 1988, I went to my nephew's wedding. He just become a doctor, and he was marrying a doctor also, MD. And that's after the day was over. Well, I went at 6 o'clock. I went to the hotel bar to get me a screwdriver, vodka and orange juice. Opened the door, and the joint was jumping. It was crowded with Asians. They got off of work. There were Vietnamese, Chinese, and others. The LA workers. And I got back, I got my drink, and I got my eyes open to, who does the cleanup and the hard work. And then at every red light you stopped at in LA, they were out there selling, and the Spanish were out there selling oranges. They were out there for the city of LA doing good, nothing but good. Love y'all.
Love you too, Betty. Thank you so kindly for your call. Come on in, Brian.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
You're here. Go ahead, Brian.
I can't believe. Yeah, I can't believe you're trying to brainwash people like what you just said. First off, let's go back to Panama. You said that thousands of civilians were killed. Well, if the Panamanian army wasn't such cowards, they wouldn't hide behind their civilians, and only 212 civilians were killed. So, yeah, how about Venezuela? Yeah, go ahead and laugh. Go ahead and laugh. You want to talk about Wikipedia? Go ahead and laugh about it. Yeah, your army was a bunch of cowards. They were looking for an international criminal. Don't forget that either, okay? You want to talk about Venezuela? What is their inflation rate right now because they have so much oil? What is their inflation rate, Alberto? 473%. Who runs the government in Venezuela? What do? They price fix everything.
Thank you very much, Brian. Brian, thank you very much. All right, thank you. Well, I mean, look, there's just so much of misinformation one I can let on air, folks. There, I don't even know what to answer if that is worth answering. Thousands of Panamanians were killed. The soldiers were not cowards. The soldiers just were up against the United States of America, the most powerful military in the world. It's not worth discussing what Brian just said. I'm sorry. It just made that little sense. Anyway, folks, let me go to well, we're running close on time. So, Jack, just bring line one in, and I'll just take it from there. I think that is Harry. I'm pretty sure. Line one, come on in. Line one, Harry, real quick. Go ahead. You're on. You're on, sir. Line one, talk. Go ahead. I am hearing somebody talk. Continue. All right, line one. All right, if he can't talk, let's go to line to Johnny.
Convenient amnesia, Brian, brain, convenient amnesia. Who are the cowards here today? Right now, it's the Israeli army picking on a bunch of unarmed civilians dressed up in their gear with backpacks, like as if they're going away, far away from home, when they're just miles away from their home. Why are they dressed up like that with all kinds of military gear and arms, and they beat up on civilians? Let's see them fight the Iranians without the United States there to back them up.
They cannot. They couldn't. I mean, unfortunately, there are not enough people in Israel to beat a true Iranian army. Israel is totally dependent on the United States. Johnny, I got to go to Miguel. Miguel, line number 3.
They're a welfare state. They're a welfare state.
Miguel, number 3. Let's see, coming in a minute. Miguel, you're on. Miguel, you're on.
Okay, I'm on. You know what? Here's what gets me is that the G7 was meeting Canada, I think the last day of today. And Brain's hero, his beloved MAGA leader, left mid-conference. And the only little text we have of him speaking there is the G8. And telling about how he wants Brain, I think that's what you call him, Brain, how he wants Russia back into the G8. And the other soundbite was about Greenland. This dude is what's becoming of this America? You know, what is becoming of the nation?
Miguel, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I have one call that I got to get in. But thank you for your call. Tomorrow, please listen and call in a little earlier. Appreciate you, brother. Let's go to Tall Boss. Last call. Tall Boss, you got to be quick.
Yes, sir. I just want to say, like Bob Marley said, Buffalo Soldier, didn't my people before me?
All right.
Country.
All right.
Now you look me with the scorn. You want to eat up all my corn.
Thank you, my brother. Tall Boss. That's Tall Boss. All right. Anyway, folks, we got to get out of here. Let me throw it to the studio real quick before we close this baby down.
Nothing here, Alberto.
Thank you, my brother. Let me just say one thing, folks. Air Tracker has found a whole lot of American tankers have left the shores of the United States and head into different countries, different bases in Europe. We don't know what that means, but it should be something that we are concerned about. Call your congressperson, call your senator. We do not want another war. Any war that we get in this case where, let's say, Iran, whatever, defeated because of the help of the United States, put a target on our backs. Terrorism will resurge again. Let's look out for ourselves and stop having our policies governed by lies. Anyway, folks, I love you all. The rest of the program is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. You can write me directly at kpft@politicsdoneright.com, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!